Good evening. Welcome to the Plan Board meeting for September. Mr. Castillo will call the roll in just a second.
Robert Ackerman,
Here.
Jamie Bell, Tina Certain, Nicholas Hill,
Here.
Dr. Merman,
Here.
Joshua Nay,
Here.
Jason Sanchez,
Here.
Stephanie Sutton. We have a quorum.
Apparently not here. Just a minute, I'm trying to get to my, okay. Can I have, are there any comments on the agenda? If not, can I get a motion to adopt the agenda? Feel free.
Motion so moved.
We have a motion to adopt the agenda. Do I have a second?
Yeah,
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Could I have a motion to approve last month's minutes? Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Are there any comments from the public on issues not on our agenda tonight? If there is, you can come up and speak for 3 minutes at a time. Thank you. Seeing none, Mr. Castillo, would you read our first item? Yeah. By the way, have we stopped reading the agenda statement?
Yeah, they've changed that on us, so we don't have an agenda statement anymore.
Okay, that's fine.
First item on the agenda, 2023-904 LD 23-122, Land Development Code Amendment, deleting board member, probationary period. This is a Land Development Code for, in order to delete the requirement for a probationary period for members of the City Plan Board and other development review boards. And for that,
Ms.
we have-
Massey, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair Ackerman and members of the city's Plan Board. I am Badez Massey. I'm a planner in the city's planning division within the Department of Sustainable Development. I'm here tonight to present two text amendments, the first of which was read into the record, and it involves the deletion of the 60-day probationary period for members or appointments to the city's Plan Board and City Development Review Board prior to the commencement of the term of office. And this is being presented tonight by the staff of the Department of Sustainable Development, but the directives were given by the City Commission to the City Attorney's Office, and so I'm here tonight on behalf of the City Attorney's Office to present these petitions. The adoption of this request would be or would have impact citywide, so it doesn't apply to any one particular piece of property within the city. It is an amendment to Chapter 30 of the Gainesville Code of Ordinances, so if it is adopted, it will have a citywide impact. The first section in which the amendment will occur is Section 30-3.3 pertaining to the probationary period for individuals appointed to the City Plan Board, and on the screen you have the section shown with strike-throughs which are being recommended by the City Attorney's Office for adoption. The next section is Section 30-3.4, which pertains to the probationary period for membership in the city's Development Review Board, or on the city's Development Review Board. And again, the text that is proposed to be removed is shown with strike-throughs. The recommendation from the city's Planning Division and our Department of Sustainable Development is to approve petition LD 23000122TCH. So the City Plan Board is being advised by staff to recommend to the City Commission that this amendment be adopted. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Massey. Questions from the board for what's basically a housekeeping issue? Seeing none, are there any comments from the public regarding this text change amendment, which would eliminate the 60-day probation period that up until now, applied to new City Plan Board meeting members? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board for a motion. Be brave.
Comment on it, or you
No, I was going to say, is Dr. Murmur allowed to motion?
No.
I think they changed this one.
That's what I figured I should.
I can tell you, I support this completely because, when I first started here, we didn't have quorum because I showed up, and then I couldn't vote. So I motion that we approve petition LD 23122 TCH.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Hill. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Passes unanimously. You have a second one?
Yes, Chair Ackerman. Can we please have the second PowerPoint presentation? Thank you. Again, Bades Massey of the city's Planning Division, Department of Sustainable Development. This next petition, LD 2300121TCH, is also a text amendment to the city's Land Development Code, Chapter 30 of the Gainesville Code of Ordinances. And it is a result of an amendment passed by Florida's legislature that amended Chapter 83 of Florida statutes, specifically Chapter 83, Section 83-425, pertaining to Florida's Landlord-Tenant Act. What this amendment to Chapter 83 does is it preempts municipalities from adopting regulations that control matters pertaining to Florida's Landlord-Tenant Act. And what has happened is, at the direction of the City Commission, the City Attorney's Office reviewed Chapter 30 to find those parts that were in conflict with this new directive as a result of the adoption of the amendment to Florida Statutes Chapter 83. Again, if adopted, this petition would have citywide impact because it amends Chapter 30, the Land Development Code. The specific sections of Chapter 30 that are being proposed for amendment are first, Section 30-2.1, which pertains to definitions. There are definitions in this section of the Land Development Code that are being proposed for amendment so that the city's land development regulations will be consistent with the amendment that the Florida legislature has adopted that changes Chapter 83 of Florida statutes. As you can see, one of those definitions will be the definition of family. What is being proposed for removal is shown with strike-throughs. What is being proposed to be retained is without an underline or strike-through or shading. And what is being proposed as an addition has been underlined. There is also a proposal to amend the definition of multifamily dwelling. And there is the proposal to amend the current definition of single-family dwelling. Because I am only here representing the City Attorney's Office, I'm not able to speak directly to the thought process behind the additions to some of the current definitions provided in Chapter 30 for these terms, but I'll be happy to try to share my understanding of what is being proposed by the City Attorney's Office to the best of my ability.
Questions for Ms. Massey? I guess I do. I gather the city attorney has attempted to make our ordinance compliant with the preemptive language that the legislature has sent. Is that accurate?
That is the intent.
Okay. And so as far as they're concerned, this does comply with, is it chapter 83?
I would respond to that with a yes.
Okay.
But again, I'm not here to speak on behalf of Mr. McDermott or anyone from that office.
Okay, thank you.
The next section proposed for amendment is the section 30-4.10, which currently contains language pertaining to occupancy limitations. And this section is being proposed for removal so that the city's land development regulations will be consistent with what is mandated with the amendment to Chapter 83 Florida Statutes, 83.425. So this entire section would be removed from the Land Development Code if this petition is adopted. Are there any questions? So the recommendation from staff to the City Plan Board is that the City Plan Board adopt, making recommendation to the City Commission to approve this petition in order to amend the two sections of the Land Development Code just shown at the recommendation of both staff, and that includes the City Attorney's Office.
Thank you, Ms. Massey. Question from Mr. Hill.
So am I interpreting this correctly that if there's a single-family dwelling and we're changing the definition of family, that means that 5 or 6 unrelated folks can live in the same single-family dwelling unit because they now consist of a single housekeeping unit?
That is correct. All the language that currently exists in Chapter 30 that was determined by the City Attorney's Office to be in conflict with what municipalities have been told by the state they can or cannot do when it comes to matters of the Florida Landlord-Tenant Act is being proposed for removal or some other form of modification so that our land development regulations are consistent with that state law. And we're required to do that under Chapter 163 of Florida statutes, which state that your land development regulations are to be consistent with your comprehensive plan, and both of them are supposed to be consistent with Florida law.
Thank you.
Effectively, what you're saying is we're here to rubber stamp this.
Oh, no, I didn't say that.
Dr. Murmer?
Thank you. So I've actually been, okay, got it off there, sorry. I've actually been looking into HB 1417 for the past 2 or so months because of its effects on the rental unit permit program, and I just got to say that I think that this is absolutely right. So I think this is the way to go. It's pretty non-controversial, and it jives with my understanding.
Mr. Sanchez?
I'll build on that. I think it's a rare case where the state seems to be more progressive than the city. And so I don't know, I'm very much in support of this. Even if I wasn't in support of this, it occurs to me that we have no choice. So it's a very easy thing to support because there is no alternative.
Actually, I think we proposed this in the group of ordinance changes for when we sent them along on the exclusionary zoning. We eliminated most of these, and it's just been put back in recently. So I also am not exactly unhappy. I'm not crazy about the state constantly preempting large sections of what the cities normally would do, but here we are. Any other questions from the board? Seeing none, are there comments from the public regarding this text change, which will eliminate several occupancy limitations that the city currently enforces? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board for a motion. Comments, Dr. Irmer?
Thank you. I move to recommend approval of petition LD 23-000121 TCH by amending section 30-2.1 definitions and deleting section 30-4.10 occupancy limitation to remove regulations relating to residential tenancies or the landlord-tenant relationship as preempted by section 83.425 of the Florida statutes.
You're thorough. That was very thorough.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that, yeah.
We have a motion, and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. I think Mr. Hill did. Oh, no, Mr. Sanchez, sorry.
I think Dr. Murmur should do all of our motions. That was very well done.
Okay, can we
Thank
move
you.
on to our next one? And thank you very much, Ms. Massey.
Item number 2023-944, LD 23-109, dry root cider special use permit. This is a request for a special use permit to allow an alcoholic beverage establishment at the 4th Avenue Food Park. And presenting will be planner Nate, trying to blank here.
Chan,
Chan, thank you. Wow. I'm fine.
you're a little
Sorry,
young to
Nate.
forget names. That's my deal.
How long have we worked together, Juan? It's okay.
Where's your name tag?
What's my name? I don't know. My name is Nathaniel Chan. I'm a planner with the City of Gainesville, Department of Sustainable Development. This is petition LD 23-109 SUP, a special use permit for an alcoholic beverage establishment at 409 Southwest 4th Avenue. It's part of the 4th Ave Food Park, and it will be for Dry Wrought Cider, who the applicant is here today. So 4th Ave Food Park is located kind of near downtown. It's part of the Innovation District in Porter's neighborhood. The address listed here is only a portion of 4th Ave Food Park, as it actually spans a couple of different parcels and addresses. The entire food park is approximately 1.88 acres. The tenant space, or where the proposed alcoholic beverage establishment is, will be at this location at 409 Southwest 4th Ave. The 4th Ave Food Park has mixed-use zoning and mixed-use low future land use. Alcoholic beverage establishments are allowed in the MU1 zoning district with a special use permit. The applicant is proposing to occupy an existing vacant tenant space there for a tap room. So here's the existing land use and zoning. I don't think you can really see that very well, but here in the orange, that is downtown zoning. The Dry Rot Cider will be here in this tenant space. This is the 4th Ave Food Park with mixed use zoning, and RMF 5. This is residential area to the south, which is part of Porter's. I think that's all I had for that. So here's their conceptual floor plan. I think that might be a little bit hard to see too, but it's approximately 2,400 square feet of tenant space. They're providing a seating area for customers over here. Other businesses at the 4th Ave Food Park don't have seating space inside. They kind of rely on the outside seating space there. So they will be providing a seating area. The rear portion of the building closest to the multifamily zoning, that'll be reserved for staff only. There's actually a gate here and a fence. So these are not really considered entrances. They'll be mainly focusing they'll be entering the building from the front, which is the north part of the building. Manufacturing of the hard cider is done off-site, so there's no manufacturing allowed on-site, and the applicant's not proposing any additional parking changes to the exterior of the building. So they're not changing the parking or they're not changing the exterior of the building. Because they're not changing the interior or exterior of the building, that's actually a typo. They won't need building permit review, but they will need general site review, so I'll talk a little bit about that later. Here, I'm going to go over the requirements for alcoholic beverage establishments in section 30-5.3 of the Land Development Code. So there are certain requirements for distancing for alcoholic beverage establishments. So the proposed tap room will meet the distancing requirements A and B. It's greater than 300 and 400 feet from any places of religious assembly and from schools. For criteria C, the distance from residential zoning districts, if you'll remember, to the south there's residential zoning. So the measurement is taken by measuring from the front door or the entrance to the establishment to the district boundary by taking an unobstructed path there. So we've measured 175 feet from the front door to the residential boundary, district boundary. The applicant measured 180 feet, so it's somewhere in that range. Let's see here. For noise generated by the establishment, it's not expected to generate more noise than the food park already generates, and that will be handled by the city's noise ordinance. Traffic considerations, they'll be using an existing parking area, and I'll talk a little bit more about the hours of operation, which are reduced compared to the food park's hours of operation. The staff reviewed the petition and found that it meets the review criteria for a special use permit outlined in section 30-3.24 and 30-5.3 of the Land Development Code. The alcoholic beverage establishment is consistent with the comp plan, the Land Development Code, and with surrounding land uses. They're not proposing any expansion of the building or any additional parking because they're using that existing tenant space. I do want to touch on criteria I about screening and buffers. This is a little bit different from what's in the staff report, but one of the conditions will touch on adding a compatibility buffer to strengthen the compatibility between the food park and the residential development or the neighborhood to the south. And this is when I get to talk about that. If you need more details on the review criteria that are on the past slide, that can be found in the staff report. But staff recommends approval of petition LD 23-109 with conditions. The first condition is requiring compliance with the city's noise ordinance. The second condition outlines the hours of operation. So they will be closed on Monday and Tuesday. On Wednesday, Saturday, and Sunday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Sunday, they'll close at 10 p.m. And on Friday and Saturday, they'll close at 11 p.m. This is different from the 4th Ave hours. I can talk about that if you want. Condition 3, they are limited to sales and consumption. And if they wanted to expand the use to include manufacturing or additional alcoholic beverage establishments, they'll have to revise the special use permit. And condition 4, that's that compatibility buffer, type B. That is a minimum of 9 feet in width, and there are a specific number of plantings and landscaping associated with that in the Land Development Code. They'll have to maintain that, and if there is any destruction of the landscaping, they'll have to replace it. That is on the property owner. And condition 5 is just requiring them to apply for a general site review so the city can review the installation of the landscaping and implementation of the compatibility buffer. That is the end of my presentation. I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chan. Any questions from Dr. Murmer?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Very great work on this. Thank you. I just had one question about condition 2. Was this condition offered by the applicant or requested by staff?
It was offered by the applicant.
Thank you.
Mr. Sanchez.
Isn't condition one kind of redundant? I mean, wouldn't anybody have to be in compliant with noise ordinances?
It is redundant, but sorry if I feel like raspy today, but
It's okay.
I'm talking too much. It is redundant, but it is a standard condition for special use permits that we've added as sort of an additional assurance that they do comply with the noise ordinance, and we can kind of point back to that.
I just feel like you could do away with that because they're going to have to do it
You could, it's true.
right?
Any other questions for Mr. Chan? I have one. What are the normal hours for the food park?
The normal hours for the food park, so from Sunday to Thursday, they're open from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. And on Friday and Saturday, they're open until midnight.
Okay. And the applicant has agreed to these 5 conditions?
Yes, the applicant has, and the property owner has agreed to the compatibility buffer requirement. It's that condition won't be on the applicant. It'll be on the property owner to install the landscaping.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Chan?
Yeah, I got
Yes,
one.
Mr. Sanchez.
This is kind of a dumb question, but say they decide Tuesdays work for them. Do they have to go through a really drawn-out process to make that work?
Yes.
Okay.
Is there any inherent reason that the food park is open Monday and Tuesday, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So is there any inherent reason why we restrict that?
These are the hours that were proposed, and staff agreed. So
Okay.
the applicant's here to talk about the hours. If they wanted to adjust them now, they can. But they proposed these, and we kind of agreed that
Okay.
they're reduced compared to the Fourth Ave Food Park.
Thank you. Does the applicant want to give a presentation or make comments?
You should probably.
Just one comment, and if, this, the only, sorry.
Come up and give us your name, please.
My name is Dale. I'm one of the owners of Wrought, Cider. The only thing I noticed is our plan is not to open Monday and Tuesday. We have production that we have to do in a different part of town, so we've put that those days. Just Saturday and Sunday, we were planning on being open closer to the 11 o'clock hour, just because those are, prime football watching times, things like that.
Right.
So that's the only difference I noticed there.
I didn't catch what that meant. Would you like to extend the hours? or-
Just on Saturday and Sunday to the brunch hours, like 11
They've got it
a.m.
at 3 right now. They want-
I'm
That's
sorry?
all?
They've got the the condition says that they will open at 3 on Saturday and Sunday, but you're gonna, as you point out, you're gonna miss a lot of football traffic.
Yeah.
Games start at 1 on Sunday, earlier on
Yeah,
Saturday.
I don't know if there was
Okay.
something.
What hours would you like?
Just opening at 11 a.m. those
Okay,
days.
so
Yeah.
that would match the food park, right? I mean, they would already be open.
Yeah, I think they're open as early as 7.
Seven,
I think.
yeah.
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 We're no,
You can get
no
breakfast
alcohol
pizza.
there.
And y'all are not planning to serve food?
No.
Okay,
Yep.
okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions, comments? Go ahead.
I just want to say that amending condition 2 to allow them to open at 11 a.m. Saturday and Sunday, I think that makes sense. So
Yeah.
is that something so I guess this is kind of a question for the board. Is that something that we're allowed to amend in a recommendation?
We, absolutely, just put it in your motion.
All right, thank you.
I mean, I would go further.
I'm sorry?
I said I would go further. I would get rid of condition 2. I think it's ridiculous. I don't think that we should be imposing arbitrary limits on
I
business that way.
Well, and we have to, I mean, if they're gonna open till 2, that might, in the morning.
Well, I think if their hours, or maybe amend condition 2 to reflect the hours of the food park.
Okay, I would be fine with that, but, that we probably, for a special use permit for an alcohol establishment, we ought to, reflect some hours.
Yeah.
Okay.
I agree with that.
Did you have anything besides that?
I mean, I just want to point out that there are multiple establishments on their property that already serve alcohol, and so I don't know. I mean, I know they serve food too, but I can get alcoholic drinks at Square House Pizza. I think Minecca's. I haven't been to the new location yet, but I will soon. And Fehrenbacher's as well. So
That's true. So, you're right that some of the establishments at Fourth Ave already serve alcohol. Based on the definition in our land development code about alcoholic beverage establishments and restaurants. So, if you serve more than, if more than 50% of your income or revenue comes from
Food.
food, thank you, it's confusing, then you're considered a restaurant. But since they're not serving food, they're considered an alcoholic beverage establishment. If they wanted to serve food and provide more than 50% of their revenue from food, then they would be a restaurant. It would be allowed, and they wouldn't have to go through this process.
I understand, but there's nothing inherent that says we can't adjust those hours, is there?
That's right.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Chan or for the applicant?
I have one. Mr. Chan, can condition 2 be rewritten if we wanted to make the motion?
Yes, you can do whatever you want.
But do we have to list the hours, or can we just say that they can port with the same hours as the food?
You can do it any way you
Oh,
want.
gotcha. All right. Thank you.
We're all powerful.
In a very limited way.
Anything else for Mr. Chan? Okay, we'll open it up to the public. Are there any comments from the public regarding the petition for an alcoholic beverage establishment at the Fourth Avenue Food Park? Okay, seeing none, we will bring it back to the board for a motion. Dr. Murmer?
I motion that we approve LD 23-000109 SUP with the proposed conditions with condition 2 amended to say that they can only operate during hours that the Fourth Avenue Food Park is open.
Do I have a second? Second from Mr. Hill. Comments from the board?
I agree with that.
Okay. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Passes unanimously. Good luck to you. Mr. or whoever's reading our next petition, please.
2023-950 Inclusionary Zoning Implementation Methodology Update. Oh, sorry, no, that's your item. So 2023-949 Land Development Code Update List. This is an amendment to the Land Development Code regulation proposed by City Plan Board members and the City Commission. And the recommendation is for City Plan Board to hear an update from staff discussing the completed and pending Land Development Code update list.
Good evening.
Hey, miss, you might go out there because I'm having a hard, you're not picking up very well.
Is it on now? You might not realize that I'm talking. Yeah, I'll go to Hello? No? Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So this is, first of all, Brittany McMullen, Planning Department. This is strictly just an information item for the board's discussion. I know several, or a couple of the Plan Board members had asked for an update on code amendments that had begun being discussed back in 2019. There also have been some.
We're working on the update on our list because it says inclusionary zoning.
Oh, yeah, I don't have a presentation for this, sorry, this is,
Okay, that's
that's for
fine.
the next item. Sorry.
Go ahead.
So, backing up a little bit, back in 2019, the Plan Board and Commission had a joint meeting and put together a list of about almost 40 items, code update items that they wanted the department to work on. Some of those items have been completed. What's been provided to you in your backup is that list of items, the status of the items on whether or not they were completed. In addition, earlier this year, Board Member Nay had brought up some potential code changes for the Plan Board to discuss. And sort of along the way over the past few years, between the board and the commission, there's been a couple of different code change requests for staff to work on. So really, I just wanted to bring this back as a discussion item for the board before we dig too deep into the items that Board Member Nay brought up. Wanted to gauge the interest and see if there are any items on this 2019 list that you all would still want us to take a look at. I did put together sort of a summary of the items that Member Nay brought up earlier this year. They didn't make it into the backup, but I do have, if I can get the overhead, just the list here, if anybody's interested in looking at them. We don't have to talk about this all in detail tonight, but that's kind of the summary. Is there anything on this older list that you still want us to work on?
To be honest with you, I think this probably is more suitable for a workshop
Okay.
because there's just way too many items to
Yeah.
discuss. And I think it would be a less formal place and we could work that.
Sounds great.
If that's agreeable to the board, we'll get staff to schedule a workshop time to do this.
That sounds great. That's kind of what I wanted to get, was some direction from y'all on kind of how you wanted to approach potential code updates.
Well, we haven't seen this list in quite a while, and I
Yeah.
think probably we want to revisit, and there's been a few things, so I think we may want to do that.
Okay.
I have some comments, I guess, from Mr. Hill.
Well, in light of your good idea for the workshop, I can hold off on those.
Okay, that's fine.
I think,
Yeah.
there's a few items that I want to talk about on here as it pertains to certain things, so I think that's better in a workshop format.
Okay, Dr. Murmer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm fine with doing a workshop on this. I think that would be beneficial. Is there any chance that we can hammer out a target date range so we can get something close to date certain so it doesn't accidentally fall through the cracks? I mean, I'm not saying we have to decide on a date certain tonight, but a 2-3 week range to work with them.
Well, let's look at your calendar and propose something within the next 30 or 45 days, if you can manage that.
Sounds good.
And ideally, it seems like we'd meet in the second floor meeting room at the Thomas Center.
I think we could, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure the board liaison can help to coordinate that.
Thanks. Okay. Without objection, we'll ask Mr. Castillo to arrange that for us, please. Thank you.
Sounds good. Thanks.
You're off the hook. Okay, now on to inclusionary zoning.
I have found a good 2-week stretch since you asked me to.
Pardon me?
I think you asked me to recommend a date range.
I said to get back with this within 30 to 45 days.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Our last item for the evening, 2023-950, Inclusionary Zoning Implementation Methodology Update. This is a non-voting item. It's an update for the inclusionary zoning proposal that discusses the process by which inclusionary zoning will be carried out and enforced. This update also discusses an optional proposal for the inclusionary zoning threshold. And I'll be the planner presenting that. Let me go down there.
Thank you.
So good evening. For the record, my name is Juan Castillo. I am a planner with the Department of Sustainable Development. The item before you this evening is an information item designed to give you an update on the request that you have made of staff to bring before you a plan for implementation of the inclusionary zoning proposal. So tonight, I'm going to present this in 3 sections, if you will. The first section, we will cover an overview of what inclusionary zoning is and what staff is proposing to eventually adopt. The second one, we will be discussing staff's proposal for the implementation of a procedure to execute inclusionary zoning. And lastly, we will have space for discussions and recommendations from the City Plan Board. So back in 2019, the commission directed staff to take an overview of the affordable housing landscape within the city of Gainesville, as well as an equity development lens. And so to that end, the consultants, HR&A, were hired, and they provided an analysis of our stock of affordable housing. And after their analysis, they made recommendations within the report. One of those recommendations was the implementation of an inclusionary zoning regulation, and that is what we are discussing here today, part of it. So inclusionary zoning is, in essence, a land use policy that requires that new development provide affordable housing unit. There are several municipalities that have inclusionary zoning regulations, and they all differ depending on the market of those municipalities. But that's what the city of Gainesville is proposing.
Let me just for anybody that doesn't know, a copy of that report is available online if anybody would like to read the analysis that HR&A did, as well as their recommendations.
That's correct. And also, if you go to our agenda item, that is one of the items on the backup as well. Now, a inclusionary zoning proposal normally has a few key components to it. They have a requirement for development offset or some type of threshold. They have a certain amount of developments that are designed to be affordable as from the total developments that are being provided. They also have a target audience or a target tenant as far as their housing, their income. And so with that in mind, staff is proposing with their inclusionary zone proposal here for it to have a 10% of affordable units designated for them to be affordable, and that is 10% of the total units that are being provided by a development. So as an example, if you're providing 10 units, one of those units will be affordable. 100 units, 10 units will be affordable, et cetera. And they'll be targeting a tenant whose household income does not exceed 80%, 80% of the AMI, so area median income. Our proposal also incorporates a fee in lieu of. It has a development scale of 10 units, so 10 units currently triggers the inclusionary zoning regulations for a development. Its affordability term is for 99 years or in perpetuity. The unit pricing will follow HUD guidelines, and the characteristics of the unit are meant to be identical to market rate units. So that includes materiality and any services and allowances that each unit have. It will have to be consistent with any of those units, market rate units. This also includes when those units become available. So if the development is opening up market rate units to be occupied by tenants, they have to do the same with the affordable housing units as well. So staff and the H&R report looked at other municipalities in order to compare how their inclusionary zoning proposal looked and what type of regulations it provided. And so we have here a snapshot of what those municipalities look like, their affordability level and their portion of development designed or designated as affordable housing. As you can imagine, each of the municipalities do have their variances and are not exactly the same, but we did find some consistencies within these municipalities. The affordability level tend to be around 60%, and the portion of development tend to be around 10%, with ranges of up to 15%. And again, these numbers reflect the market that they are within. In comparison to these numbers, staff is recommending that our proposal include a 10% portion of development. So 10% of the units, again, will have to be affordable for a target audience or a target tenant whose household income does not exceed 80% AMI. Along with this analysis, and at the request of the City Plan Board, staff looked at other municipalities' threshold or the level of units that they have to provide in order for the inclusionary zoning regulations to kick in. And this is a snapshot of those thresholds. This, of course, is not an exhaustive list. This is a snapshot, but what we did notice is that 10 units was fairly consistent across the board of other municipalities, with outliners ranging up to 25 or more units. Then you have some municipalities that actually provide tiered thresholds, But this is that list. If you like, I can answer any more questions on that. Another component of the proposal is language within our comprehensive plan that would allow for the inclusion of bonuses associated with and to the direction of meeting the total cost of the affordable housing units. And so that language allows for a density bonus of 30% up to 90%, and that is to reflect also the voluntary proposal or involuntary portion of this proposal. And I'll talk about that here in a minute. So along with comprehensive plan language proposal, we also have a land development code language that will be amended. In this particular case, we are amending the density bonus point chart by eliminating it. And the reason for that is we want to consolidate the requirements of bonuses to the affordable housing element, and as well as this chart currently relies on a density bonus point system that is outdated and is rarely ever used. So it tends to be complicated, it's rarely ever used, and it's for the most part ineffective. So by incorporating the bonus point system into the affordable housing, that will generate a more efficient bonus system that will also hopefully generate more interest into in providing affordable housing. Along with the elimination of the density bonus manual, we are, of course, proposing to add language that would allow and explain the provision for affordable housing, our inclusionary zoning regulation. So to kind of cap it up, our proposal is for 10% of affordable housing as a portion of the overall provision of affordable housing units, total development units, with 80% AMI, or targeting a population that does not exceed the 80% of their 80% housing income. And this is you have 30% density bonus that will offset the overall affordable housing provision. This, as of this moment, is for a threshold of 10 units. So if a development is providing 10 units or more, they would be required to adhere to this. There is a fee in lieu of component to the provisions of inclusionary zoning before you. There's also a comparability clause so that any provided units should be comparable to market rate units, and that includes same material, same services, and also disbursement throughout the development so that there's not a cluster of affordable housing units. All of the units are meant to look the same and feel the same. I mentioned earlier the provision for deeper affordability as an option. The idea behind what you're seeing here is that if a developer wants to provide deeper affordability, and that can be in a way of providing more units or providing a lower threshold for household income, they would have the option of increasing density bonuses. So if they provide, say, 10 more housing units, so it goes from 10 to 20, then they will be eligible for 15% density bonus. If they reduce their AMI from 80 to 70, then they will also be eligible for 15% density bonus, and they can also mix match this, so they can increase the units that they're providing by 10, decrease the AMI by 10%, and then they will have 30% of density bonus. Other benefits include 50% application reduction or any other reductions necessary, tree mitigation fee reduction, and this all goes towards helping to meet that offset to the cost of providing the affordable housing units. So at the meeting of October 13th, 2022, the commission directed the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee to hold a series of public engagement meetings, 4 to be exact. Those meetings are listed here. The first meeting was over at East Gainesville Alliance. Then afterwards, they held a meeting at the City Services Fair. At that fair, they actually held 2 meetings, one in the early morning and one in the late afternoon. Parkview Baptist Church was their third location, and Holy Faith Catholic Church was the 4th location. And the commission directed AHAC to conduct these meetings in order to present the inclusionary zone proposal in layman's term to our neighbors, as well as receiving feedback from our neighbors and finalizing this effort with a recommendation for the city commission. Along and over the required 4th meeting by the City Commission, AHAC also held a series of public meetings where our neighbors were able to attend and hear inclusionary zoning discussions. This is the list of all those meetings that were held. Aside from AHAC initiated public meetings, we also had meetings that were initiated by staff. These meetings include a City Commission Hall meeting the 13th of October in 2022, City Plan Board meeting that include the 17th of October, the 8th of December, as well as a meeting with the Gainesville Community Reinvestment Area Advisory Board and the Alachua County Labor Coalition. So now we come to the point of the presentation where we are going to discuss the proposal for the implementation or the methodology of implementation for the inclusionary zoning that we have before you, and that revolves around the request from the City Plan Board to bring this for you, as well as providing an option for that threshold.
Mr. Castillo, I think Mr. Ney has a question.
I was waiting until the end.
Okay.
I just want to be personal, right?
Never mind, he just wanted to be first.
So the proposal before you has 7 sections. I am going to consolidate a few just in the sake of time. And also some of these sections are fairly similar to each other. But everything begins from the beginning, right? So we have a first step and an application. The first step is where a developer comes and sits down with staff, and then we have a proposal. Staff gives any observations or recommendations for the developer to consider when they are submitting the proposal for actual review. At that first step, we envision we will be talking about the inclusionary zoning regulations and giving direction to a developer to how they can meet, if their current proposal meets these inclusionary regulations, and any kind of pitfalls that we may see before they submit their item for review. As far as monitoring adherence and agreement submission, we envision, of course, that these will be monitored in order for the implementation to be to make sure that the implementation is there. Staff is of the agreement that any regulations would be required from the applicant to include within their submission. So regulations for affordable housing units, they will have to provide how much of those units are affordable. They will have to outline that in their in their submittal package, as well as other information that may revolve around the value of a particular unit or the cost of developing a particular unit. Alongside that, there would be outside organizations that would be responsible for making sure that those affordable housing unit spaces are filled with tenants that meet the 80% AMI requirement. And those outside organizations can be any organization that the development seems fit to enter into an agreement with. There will be a requirement, however, that the developer submits a legal or documents of them entering into a legal relationship with that outside organization. So this can be done via a deed showing that there is that relationship, or any other form of legal documentation. If there is found that the inclusionary zoning regulations are not being met, there is a enforcement available to that. That's going to go through our, or at least as it is proposed right now, through our code enforcement department, and we would rely primarily on the organization that is submitting or that is overseeing the fulfillment of affordable housing units to let us know if there's any situations where they're not able to fulfill the required numbers of affordable housing units per the agreements of the development that was approved and that is being proposed. And so if that does not occur, there are penalties that are associated with that. This can include penalties on fees that are accrued as time goes by until the amount of affordable housing units is rectified, or whatever the case may be, whatever regulation is not being met is brought into compliance. One item that we have heard discussions on is the how inclusionary zoning compares to or falls within the recently passed Florida statute of the Live Local Act. I'm not going to go into the details of the Live Local Act because that's not what this presentation is about, but this is designed to fall within the umbrella of Live Local Act. So if there is a provision that somehow it's in conflict with inclusionary zoning, Live Local Act would supersede those regulations. However, staff has reviewed the proposal before you and finds that there really isn't any situations where they would come in conflict, at least to how we understand Live Local Act as of this moment. So the other option, the other component of what the City Plan Board has requested of us is to come before them with an option of a threshold. Currently, we are proposing a 10-unit threshold, and that is based on the recommendations by the HRNA report, as well as its consistency with other municipalities that we have observed. The option that is before you is to increase that to 51, and that is based on a consistency with our current threshold for major developments. So currently, we have a threshold where developments can be reviewed either via rapid, minor, or major review. 3 or so months ago, the commission voted to increase the threshold of development that would kick a development into a major development review, and that threshold is 51, decrease, and that threshold is 51. So this option would be in line with that decrease in threshold review, 51 being that threshold to kick it into a major development review. So today we are discussing the information item for inclusionary zoning. We look forward to any feedbacks that the board will have and any direction that you may have. We do plan to bring this before you at the October meeting with your feedback implemented and ready for a vote. And then we want to bring this before the city commission at their January meeting, given that they will be during their winter break until then. And with that, I say thank you, and I'm here and available for any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Mr. Nay?
I have a comment and then I have a couple questions. First, I do sort of have some problems with the inclusionary zoning. Affordable housing requirements and new market rate developments make housing more expensive overall and put the entire financial burden for housing subsidies on middle-class renters while letting rich people who overwhelmingly live in single-family homes that they own off the hook. Now, this HRNA report was an inclusionary zoning report, right? So to me, those are tied together. Does inclusionary zoning even work without amending exclusionary zoning in some way?
Is that a question?
Is it going to work if we're not going to amend exclusionary zoning at all? Because this report was tied to both.
So the report was, the exclusionary portion of that report did take into consideration the eventual implementation of inclusionary zoning. However, these two items are separate items. And as far as the provision of affordable housing, the inclusionary zoning portion of that report the hopes is that it would generate a good amount of affordable housing to where we can start addressing the unavailability of places where people can live.
Because a lot of the reports that I've read about inclusionary zoning, it's not really an affordable housing policy. It is more of a economic integration policy. And my problem is that people are going to use this as like, hey, look, we're working on affordable housing, when I don't really feel like it's a real serious thing that we're doing here. Because I don't think we're going to have a ton of units opening up from this. If we're not going to open up our zoning in other ways, then I don't know what we're going to be doing.
As a practical matter, all of the stuff that we've proposed in the last year, including elimination of exclusionary zoning, are slow and incremental, and that's just the reality of the world we live in. We can't mandate this happen all at once.
Right, and I'm okay with that. I do have some things like I don't know about the lifetime of building. I'm probably better if we had the 99 years, which HRNA recommended. I'm also some of these University Avenue and Historic District amendments. Like if we're going to pass inclusionary zoning, I think those are important because there are places right now that they can't put housing. You look at University Avenue. There's that closed convenience store. There's dense housing all the way across the street, but that place can't have it. So if we're going to do that, I feel like we should put those historic districts,
Push them back some.
Yeah. Remove the buffer.
Okay.
remove the buffer from the historic districts for if you're going to be building dense housing with inclusionary zoning. I think those amendments are good.
Mr. Hill?
Thank you. Juan, thank you so much for that presentation. It just, every time I look at this thing, it gets a little better, and I appreciate all your efforts for you and all the staff. I did want to bring up the letter that we got from the Apartments Association. I thought it was pretty interesting. So they brought up a good point. HB 7103 requires that the city fully offset the cost to the developer when inclusionary zoning is mandated. We can typically say that's offset by the density bonus, right? You're allowed to have more units, and that'll offset the costs. However, they bring up a good question. If a developer can demonstrate that the incentives do not offset their anticipated expenses, will the city provide an appeals process for that? If so, do we not need to have that in place before we adopt something like this?
I think that's exactly the kind of advice that we need at this moment from you all, if you're looking at that, for us to come to that vote next month. So if this is something that it is a big ticket item, if you will, we're looking for that kind of direction and feedback from you all at this point.
Because I just want to bring up, if we do that third party in perpetuity that manages these affordable units, that's an additional cost to the developer, and they could use that whenever they try to go build an apartment complex and sit, and have a kind of a formula that they use that, hey, the math doesn't checks out, so we're going to appeal it, and as a result, we're not going to have to provide any affordable units. So I just want us to be prepared for that in whatever way that we can, and have a counter argument ready, because I think that's a fairly good point. That's all.
My personal view about that is that we've actually done some agreements for affordable housing that are being implemented right now on most of at least 3 or 4 of the buildings along 13th Street, and I think there's one out Old Archer Road they're just starting on. And I've asked, I know one of Mr. Diedenbach's projects, how we would enforce this, and I've been assured by at least that client as well as Ms. Boyes that it's enforceable. And so I think I'm sure lots of people are going to say we need to get all the density increases we can for free, and then we'll keep them and go on. And I don't think that's going to probably be effective. But anyway, I have more comments, but Dr. Murner has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Juan, great presentation. Thank you for all the work you've done on this, and also for visiting us at the Emmanuel Mennonite Church. You've done a fantastic job on this. Also wanted to say thank you to Mr. Hill for making the recommendation, that we include an appeals process if a developer feels that the costs are not fully offset. I think that's a good idea and a good way to address the apartment association's concerns. I have a bunch of questions. One is just I need clarification. Is the threshold for major development 50 or 51? Because I'm seeing on the online backup 50, and in your presentation here 51.
Yeah, that's a scrivener's error, if you will, but it's 51.
Yeah, thank you. Next question: how many new apartment complexes? And you can ballpark it. I know I don't expect you to have like all kinds of numbers stuck in your head, but how many new apartment complexes with between 10 and 49 units have been built in the city of Gainesville over the past 10 years? Or I should say, sorry, between 10 and 50 units.
That's a
I
good
think we
question.
should get back with that for sure.
Yeah.
But I don't think we'll know off the top of our heads.
And
We can
that
definitely bring
will
that back
be
next month, though. I'm taking notes.
Yeah, okay, so that'd be a good question for next month. Another one
Yeah.
would be, so one would be how many new apartment complexes with between 10 and 50 units have been built over the past 10 years in the city. The other one would be how many new apartment complexes with 51 or more units have been built in the past 10 years in the city. All right. So penultimate question, what harm is predicted by using a 10-unit threshold as opposed to the 51-unit threshold? Like why, what predicted harm was used to, I guess, make us or make staff reconsider the threshold that they proposed?
I would defer that to the Well, actually, Steph.
Well,
But
but the obvious harm is you can defray the cost of the affordable units over more units, and each unit will contribute less to each of the units. If you only have 10, you know, each of your units is contributing a larger amount of money to subsidize the affordable unit.
Yeah, I see that. Although I would point out that the affordable units aren't subsidized only by rents levied on the market units. There are these things called Section 8 vouchers, which will also subsidize. So there's other ways, like,
That would operate on reducing the AMI that they're allowed to use. So,
oh, a good point, actually, sorry.
yeah, so that's what the vouchers would do, is it would increase qualifications for people who have less than, say, maybe have 50% of AMI. They would be subsidized so that they get into the 80 for the developer, but only 50 for them.
I see what you're saying. Thank you for that clarification. That's actually very, very helpful. I mean, I still think that the 10-unit threshold's the way to go. I mean, I know some people, free marketers, like the hardcore free marketers, might think that, or might argue that this will do one of two things: prevent developers from wanting to come in here, or create a race to the bottom where they're going just on the other side of the city limits. I got to say, you know, there are nonprofit affordable housing developers that build, you know, smaller complexes with, like, you know, 12, 15, 20 units. So I don't think that we should be too concerned about there being a void of development if we keep the 10-unit threshold. I'm just really concerned that we are going to just be creating fewer affordable units if we move it to 51, which leads to my last question. So if most other parts of your staff recommendation is based on an analysis of market conditions, I think I read in the backup that, or you said in the presentation, like the 51 unit would make it consistent with our definition of major development. If other parts of the recommendation are based on, like, expert analysis, why should we prioritize the Gainesville's city-specific definition of consistency over what the experts have already said?
So to that end, so you're correct. The 10%, the 10% unit provision is based on the HRNA report, which they did a market analysis and came up to that number, as well as comparison with other municipalities. The request for an additional option was submitted to staff from the board, and so staff really was not able to produce a market analysis the same way HRNA report has. However, staff looked at other options that would remain consistent and will make a rational nexus, if you will, that we could still point to. And one of those provisions has been within our code. We already have a language that implements a threshold based on the impacts of visualized or implemented impacts of a development. And so along those lines, we decided to use that thinking and the ability for that threshold to mitigate those impacts and apply it to a proposal for a second option for that threshold implementation. But as it stands, staff is still recommending the 10%. The 51% is, 10 units, right. And the 51 units is that option, that if you were to decide to go that route, that would be there for you.
Okay, thank you very much for that answer. You don't have to respond to this next comment about the answer. It sounds like you guys were tasked by this board, or staff was tasked by this board, to find an alternative option. And an alternative option was found, but the best rationale that could be used to justify it was, well, we found this other definition in the city's code. So Sounds like you did your best, but, you know, your original proposal was still the one that actually has the most evidence backing it up. So thank you again for all the work you've done on this. You've been great.
Mr. Nang?
Yeah, and I think if you want to make that proposal next, when we vote on it next time, you can. I mean, that came from a plan board member, it wasn't me, but, you know, they felt like they're very experienced in development here in Gainesville, and they felt like that number made more sense when there's not that many 10-unit buildings getting built, and these people aren't going to have lawyers on staff, and you know, that's why we want them to have a very clear process for those guys to do.
And I think that was the point that maybe has been missed in this, is that if we're going to use a lower unit threshold, 10 units, then we need to reduce the expense of participating in the program. And so one of the specific things I think we wanted was that we develop a standardized agreement, much the way if you buy a house, people use a standardized Florida bar form for that is widely used throughout the industry, and you don't have to really go find your own lawyer to get an even thing. And so I think the critical thing here is that we have a procedure that if I am a 10-unit builder or a 20-unit builder, it's not going to cost me tens of thousands of dollars to participate in a program that's mandatory, because that's the opposite of affordable housing. We're trying not to pile costs onto this program. And so I think for me, the key thing is that we decide on either employees at the, you know, at the city of Gainesville, one or two that implement this program and oversee it, or that we delegate to somebody like the Gainesville Housing Authority, Alachua County Housing Authority, with a standardized agreement that, so that it's not a complicated affair. Because right now, the proposal we're having here is I'm a developer, I need to now go find an agreement, I need to go find an organization to oversee this, and then I have to have some kind of a reporting thing. And I think that's going to be very, very difficult.
May I build?
And here comes Mr. Persons to save the day.
Oh, no.
Sorry, really quick, can I build on that? Because you make an excellent point, but I did want to point something else out. They have like standardized leases, so instead of requiring the developers to specifically go to just Gainesville Housing Authority or just Alachua County Housing Authority, there are options already in the proposal, so there could be like a standardized agreement that can be universal among all of those providers. Would that be?
That's exactly what I want, but right now, that's not what we're proposing.
I just want a clarification, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Persons.
Thank you, Chair. Andrew Persons, Chief Operating Officer of the city. So I think to answer some of the questions or concerns, we expect with this program that the city will be the stopgap. The Housing and Community Development Department, which is our housing department, we have staff that can do the periodic monitoring, work with the developer, the management company, long term, to make sure that the compliance element of the ongoing IZ requirement is being met. We have developed a standardized deed restriction and covenant in the favor of the city for some of the projects that the chair had mentioned. So we have a standardized form, so they will not have to go out and get counsel. We have a form set up. We have a process. I think from staff perspective, we see a partnership with some of the housing authorities as being additive to the end result. In the case of some of the voluntary IZ deals that we've made, the housing authority has been able to bring resources in terms of tenant-based vouchers that the city doesn't have the option to. So in those instances, what the city's sort of regulatory role is. We brought the sort of regulatory part of it and brought those units down to the 80% AMI, and then the housing authority was able to bring in tenant-based vouchers that brought that affordability down to like the 50% AMI level. So there was it was a partnership, but we're not necessarily talking about that in so much as the city will maintain the sort of the baseline. So in those, I could see those smaller unit developments, the city being the sort of the ongoing sort of regulatory partner, but obviously we want the housing authorities and other nonprofit housing providers in the community to be partners, because they leverage resources that we don't have based on our status as a city and their status as a statutory authority.
They actually provide the tenants.
Absolutely, and that's a big.
That's the key thing for
Right.
me, is that they have long lists of tenants.
Absolutely.
Who have already been qualified.
Exactly, and they have other resources that those authorities provide to their tenants in terms of just other types of wraparound support services that, again, the city doesn't necessarily have. So there's a great deal of partnership there. But I think at the end of the day, like as you know, the board talked about, for the policy itself, the city will always be the sort of the backstop. So I think when we bring this back to you next month, we can revise that language to make sure that that's, you know, completely clear that the city is going to have a role, but that we obviously want, you know, that partnership from other providers.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Operating Officer.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Mr. Castillo? If not, we'll open it up to public comment, please. If you would please state your name and stick to 3 minutes. 3, not 33. Anybody? I hope we're informative for whatever you're doing here. All right, then, Mr. Dietenbach, okay.
I have to bring my cheaters up here. I figure since nobody else is going to come up here, I might as well come up and say something, right?
Yeah.
Saying I have no projects tonight and I just have Dr. Dietenbach to keep me company.
Have you sitting back there silence is kind of scary.
I know, and just listening and learning. So, as some of you all were listening and learning when we were at the American Planning Association's Florida chapter conference a couple weeks ago, it's tough to sit there and listen to Gainesville chided as the poster child who kept exclusionary zoning in. But
Yes, it is.
I wholly agree with the comments of Plan Board Member Nee. Having been a Duck Pond resident for years, and seeing the diversity of housing stock that exists in the Duck Pond and harmoniously it exists, it's a testament to the fact that diversity and compatibility are not mutually exclusive. And you can put housing units in there. I can also say, as one who stood at this podium for 33 years now doing this planning gig, I need a side hustle, but I have never had a client come to me and say, I want to put density inside this neighborhood. And one of the things that we are constantly performing in our office are due diligence projects and looking at where density would go. And I think, you know, again, to Plan Board Member Nee's comments, I have looked at the historic districts and where they wrap around the city of Gainesville, and especially where they wrap around the university area. And the context area of placing density in and around the Innovation District, the University of Florida campus, Santa Fe College's downtown area, is greatly limited by how those districts approach University Avenue and the main thoroughfares. And I would truly like to see more opportunity for people to live, work, create their lives, families, recreate, and enjoy the social and cultural benefits of an urban setting, as opposed to being castigated to living in a suburban type nation dependent on single occupant automobiles. And I think we need to roll back some of those edges, because it's kind of a fallacy that those are really contributing properties per se when they're a block behind an abandoned convenience store, or when they're sitting abutting buildings that are already multiple stories high. And I think we have to look at the oncoming wave of the Live Local Act and how that's going to seek to try to expressly allow more density in the urban cores of our cities. Have a great night.
Thank you, Mr. Diedenbach. Any other comments, please? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board for additional comments for, we don't have to take a vote tonight, so
We can just chat.
you can just chat or tell.
Okay. Well, I wanted to address something that member Nate brought up really early on, which I think the gist of it was sort of like we're spending a lot of energy on something that maybe doesn't have a lot of, we won't see a lot of results from. Is that sort of a fair characterization?
Yes.
Rapid results.
I mean,
Rapid results.
If we want big changes, we have to do big changes.
Right. I would counter that doing something is better than doing
Right.
nothing, right? And so we've seen that this current makeup of the city commission doesn't have the appetite for very large scale changes in zoning, but they do seem to have the appetite for this. And I would say to the rest of the board too is if we have the opportunity to help some people, I think we should always take that, right? If the option is helping some people versus helping nobody, we should choose helping some people. And so that's kind of how I feel about this particular proposal. You know, if I would encourage people to present it as the, you know, setting aside 10% at 10 units or more. I believe Member Sutton will probably, if she's here next month, present a motion to counter that. But I think that that's healthy debate, and I think that that's sort of how we should approach this.
Dr. Murmer.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Yeah, so I agree completely. It's better to do something rather than nothing. I mean, earlier today I was really busy. Really wanted a hamburger, didn't have any, but there were some potato chips. I ate them, right? I wasn't like, I don't have a hamburger, so I'm not going to eat anything. So yeah, I just wanted to say for the record, I'm sure everyone can already tell, that I think that we should stick with the 10 units. Again, staff was asked to find an alternative, and they did find an alternative, but then the only rationale that they could find was that, oh, well, it fits a definition that the city made itself. So all the analysis still says it should be at 10 or more units. And I understand the public commenters' point about live local, but I would remind everyone that live local applies to industrial and commercial properties, whereas this would apply to multifamily residential properties. Also, another thing, I think this might be bigger than we're all thinking, because correct me if I'm wrong, Juan, but this will not just apply if somebody wants to build a new apartment complex on a lot that's been dirt for 50 years. If there's an outdated building that gets demolished and they want to replace that building, this would kick in, right?
That's correct.
There are a lot of buildings that are becoming very outdated in the Southwest. So let's not forget about that, and that's all multifamily. I think this has the potential to be bigger than we think. And I will finally shut up. Sorry.
Thank you. My comment about this,
No, go ahead.
I get to go first,
Please.
is that I, despite what Mr. Ney says, I'm kidding you. Turn that off. Everything we're doing is incremental. Exclusionary zoning was, they made it sound like we were going to have bulldozers at the edge of Gulfview and would bulldoze that all down and put in multifamily housing, and that just simply is not going to happen. The city's suburban neighborhoods are almost fully built out. There's not really an opportunity to put a lot of multifamily or duplexes or whatever, and quadruplexes as was proposed. It would be very, very incremental. And unfortunately, in a city that's already in existence, everything we do is incremental. And my view is every opportunity we have to do something incremental, we should start it up now. And the earlier you start it up, the earlier you'll begin to see some fruits of that. And so I've been very pleased. The plan board, quite frankly, has been a little bit boring, demanding affordable housing for years and years, and haven't really gotten much until actually I think Mr. Diedenbach came and one of his clients volunteered 10%. After that, that's begun to kind of catch on. That's what incremental is about. And those 10% of 100 units or 200 units, that's a fair, that's 100 people. So I wouldn't despair because we can't fix this tomorrow by passing an ordinance, because we're not going to be able to do that. We've got a fully built-out city, and it is going to take some time to do this, but I think we should grab every opportunity we can. And keep in mind also, as soon as we adopt an inclusionary zoning ordinance, there's nothing that says we can't see how it works and alter it or adjust it or do anything like that. So anyway, I supported the exclusionary zoning proposal that has been overturned, but I also approve of this too, and I think we want to make it as good as we can. I'm in favor of keeping it at 10 units if we have a way that reduces the cost to a small developer. Meaning I do not want to see, Cludgeon, Bludgeon, and Steel have to be hired in order to draft an ordinance and find it needs to be a seamless, easy thing to do. You fill it out and you go. Anyway, that's what I have to say. We have lots of lights. Let me see, Mr. Sanchez.
I agree with you, Bob. I do think, again, doing something is better than nothing. I also agree with Dr. Murmur in the sense that this might have a longer tail than we anticipate. A lot of things are that way. A lot of things don't look like much when you first put them out there, and then they kind of bloom into something a lot bigger. So more the reason to do this. One thing I did want to note that Member Nate brought up, and I don't want it to get lost in the shuffle, because we have also had it in public comment. I agree that we should do away with the historic buffers with regards to inclusionary zoning, and I think that's something that we should bring up next month, or staff wants to put that in there. Right now, we're protecting the historic Little Champ on University, and by the remains of the historic Taco Bell and the historic first location of Here Again Records. It's kind of ridiculous. Nothing's going there because that land is just undesirable as it is because there's too many restrictions on development. So we're kind of shooting ourselves in the foot with potentially putting some housing with an affordable component on land that is currently pretty sketchy right now, or being used for nothing or sketchy purposes. So I just want to make sure that historic buffer argument doesn't get lost, because I think we were talking a lot about a lot of the other points you brought up, and I wanted to make sure that point didn't get lost in the shuffle. I agree with that. I think we should do away with that buffer zone for sure.
By the way, I'd just add that those kind of dilapidated housing behind the abandoned mini mart, some 10 years ago was good adaptive. It was a grow room.
Right. Oh, I don't have a problem with the house behind it. I have a problem with the mini mart.
The house behind it was a grow room.
Oh, was it?
Yeah. Anyway, Mr. Nay.
Jeez, he's hit the button. Wow. I'm just joking. No, you guys are correct. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Yes. So some growth is fine. It took us, everybody complains about the density on 13th and University Avenue. It took a long time from when that area was rezoned for the housing to get built. And this is going to take some time, and I understand that. I also don't want to list, I want the historic zones, the buffers to be talked about when we.
Okay. I agree with that. Let me see. Mr. Hill.
Actually, just curious if staff had any conversations with EDA or CHW about that 10 number. It's interesting that, Stephanie, who works at EDA, and, Jerry, who works at CHW, may come up with two different numbers or determinations of whether or not 10 is sufficient or needs to go higher based on their experience working with apartment developers. So I just didn't know if any formal or informal conversations were had with CHW or EDA or any other local consultants about those numbers, and whether or not, in their experience, that would be appropriate.
So, Not to my knowledge, not specifically to the threshold. We've reached out to some developers and discussed the ease in the process, whether they found it to be a difficult process to meet or not. We have not received any negative feedback concerning the ease of the process, but as far as like the actual threshold, we have not had a discussion for that.
Just curious.
To my knowledge, unless.
I do think what's important is that whatever we implement, it not be larded with a lot of expense. That's the opposite of what affordable housing needs, is a lot of extra expenses to participate. Anyway, I think that was the thrust of what Ms. Sutton was talking about. I don't think she was opposed to it having 10 units. She just thought it would be very expensive for somebody that built a 10-unit. Anything else? Shall we call it?
I have one thing. I just wanted to, this will be really quick. Thank you, Mr. Sanchez, for bringing up Mr. Mintonay's point about the historic buffer, and I just wanted to go on record for staff that I support getting rid of that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. That winds up our agenda for the evening. Thank you, Mr. Castillo. Are there any member comments that you haven't already made? Mr. Sanchez?
Happy birthday, Dr. Murmur.
Are we going to sing today or no?
He really doesn't want
Just
it.
making sure. If you don't want it,
It's okay,
No
it's your
singing.
birthday. We don't
we're
have to
asking
sing.
consent.
We get one happy birthday a year, and that's it. Our next meeting is October 26th. Mr. Castillo, did we do anything about scheduling our Novembers?
We are currently discussing that. We will be having a meeting with our staff, administrative staff, to go over the upcoming schedule, but that has not occurred quite just yet.
Okay.
So, but we will, that has been in discussion, has
Okay.
been brought up.
I just thought we would warn people who want to file petitions that we may or may not have a meeting in November, and we'd have, ideally, what we used to do for 10 years is we had no meeting in November because Thanksgiving conflicts with our normal meeting day, and we'd have an early December meeting that would cover both December and November, because again, Christmas conflicts with our normal day, and I think that would be good. In addition, depending on when we decide to do that, we would either have board elections this coming month, or if we have a November meeting, they would be in November.
Yeah, understood. Yeah, we are, as mentioned, that's on our radars. We are looking at any kind of proposed development or anything that's going before you in November, so we're gauging that, but
Okay.
we just haven't officially sat down and made that.
That's good. If it's on your radar, it's almost about to hit you between the eyes. We're adjourned.